October 26th, 1944. Dawn over Leyte Gulf. A thin mist clung to the jungle canopy, glowing orange beneath the rising sun. The air was heavy, wet, warm, and trembling with distant thunder. Yet the flight line at Tacloban was alive with a hum that overpowered nature itself. Pratt & Whitney R. 2,800 engines coughed, sputtered, then roared awake. The ground quivered under their vibrations. On the pierced steel runway, Lieutenant Jack Mace McAllister, age 23, Wichita, Kansas, climbed the ladder into the cockpit of his P-47 Thunderbolt, a hulking brute with a razorback spine and 850 cal Brownings buried in its wings. The Japanese called it a fat iron monster. The men of the 348th Fighter Group simply called it their sledgehammer. Mace pulled his canvas seat straps tight. He tried to ignore the sweat trickling down his ribs under the flight suit. Tried not to think of the letter he'd written last night to his younger brother. "I'll be home before the wheat harvest, kid." He closed his eyes for half a second. The smell of hot oil and cordite filled his nose. Danger hung in the warm tropical air like the charge before lightning. Today's mission: intercept incoming Japanese raids, attempting to smash American beachheads and convoy lines around Leyte. Intel warned of dozens of A6M-0s, Ki-43 Oscars, and possibly veteran pilots from Rabaul. High Command expected the enemy would hit low, skimming the waves and treetops, where they believed the Thunderbolt's massive frame and sluggish climb would fail. But that was their mistake. Captain Harold Smoke Ellison, leading Blue Flight, strode toward Mace's plane and slapped the fuselage. "Remember, boys," he shouted over the engines, "they want a turning fight. Don't give it to 'em. Dive, slash, and break. Let the jug do what it was born to do." The words echoed in Mace's head as he throttled forward. The giant prop bit into the warm morning air, and the 10-ton brute surged ahead with surprising eagerness. He felt the vibration of raw power through the stick, through his bones. The Thunderbolt lifted free of the ground, heavy, solid, confident. Below, palm trees shrank. Ahead, the dawn sky opened wide and blindingly bright. At 8,000 feet, Blue Flight leveled. The radio crackled with Ellison's voice. "Enemy bandits inbound from northwest. Multiple groups, low level. 30, maybe more. Let's greet 'em, boys." Mace swallowed hard. 30 fighters. Maybe bombers behind them. He flexed his gloved hands, rolled his shoulders back, felt the sweat cooling on his neck. The P-47s pushed westward, sunlight glinting off their olive-drab skins. As they approached the coast, the sky shifted from tranquil morning glow to something darker, like the air itself sensed the violence coming. Then he saw them. Specks at first. Shadows moving fast over the water. Zeros. A whole wall of them. Sleek, graceful, deadly, yet fragile as eggshells. Their pilots held tight finger-4 formations, certain they could turn inside any heavy American brute that dared challenge them. Mace almost heard their laughter through the canopy. Lumbering Thunderbolts? Easy prey. But when Blue Flight rolled into their attack dive, everything changed. The jug became a falling anvil. The altimeter unwound. The slipstream screamed around the canopy. The R-2800 bellowed like a beast unchained. And for the first time that morning, Mace felt something cut through the fear. Pure, electric, violent confidence. Below, the Japanese formation began to scatter. Too late. Ellison dove straight into them, guns blazing. 4 concentrated streams of 50 cal fire tore across a Zero's wing, igniting the fuel tank. The fighter turned into a fireball, raining burning scraps onto the sea. Mace lined up another. The Zero pulled hard into a turn, expecting the Jug to wallow or stall. It didn't. Mace rolled, pulled, and unleashed all 8 guns at once. The effect was apocalyptic. A storm of half-inch shells hammered the Zero's fuselage, punching through the cockpit, shearing the tailplane clean off. The Japanese pilot never saw the ocean he slammed into a heartbeat later. At 4:50 Mepper, Mace ripped through the formation, forcing Zeros to dive or scatter to avoid collision. The Jug howled downward like a meteor. He pulled out low, skimming barely 200 feet above the waves. Spray hit the belly of the Thunderbolt as he leveled off. Over the radio, he heard panicked Japanese calls, frantic, strained, breaking under shock. Suddenly, tracer fire streaked past his canopy. An Oscar latched onto his 6. Mace banked hard, but the lighter Japanese fighter clung close, inches from a perfect firing solution. The fight had just begun, and Blue Flight was far from safe. The Oscar stayed glued to Mace's tail, its Nakajima engine screaming as the lightweight fighter clawed for position. At this altitude, barely above the curling whitecaps, the air felt thicker, heavier, like it wanted to drag both machines into the sea. Mace stole a glance in his rearview mirror. The Oscar's nose flashed. Tracers whipped past his canopy, green needles of fire slicing the humid air. He shoved the throttle forward until the detent clicked. Water injection. The P-47D surged. Its R-2800 unleashed an extra 100 horses as water methanol flooded the cylinders, cooling the engine just enough to prevent meltdown. The Jug shuddered, but held together, rock solid despite the abuse. The Oscar fell back, only a few yards, but enough. Mace leveled his wings, heart thundering. "Smoke! I've got a barnacle on me!" he yelled. Static crackled. Then Ellison's voice cut through. "Drag him toward the beach. I'm high, coming down with a hammer." Mace yanked the stick left, hurtling toward the palm-fringed coastline. The Oscar followed, relentless. The Japanese pilot was good, smooth, patient, not biting on Mace's feints. He understood his aircraft's strengths. Keep the turn tight, keep the angle. Wait for the big American brute to try escaping in the vertical. But Mace wasn't going up. He slammed the Jug into a shallow dive, counting on one thing: speed. Down here, at wave-top height, a Zero or Oscar could outturn anything. But they couldn't outrun a Thunderbolt in a dive to save their lives. The airspeed needle jumped. 360, 380, 400 mph. Salt spray blurred the edges of his vision. The coastline rushed toward him like a solid barrier. But the Oscar remained, clinging, desperate for a clean burst. 3 seconds from shore, Mace banked hard right. The Oscar overshot slightly, just a few feet, barely noticeable. But it was enough. A black shape thundered downward behind them, like a falling safe. Ellison's P-47. "Brake left, Mace! Brake now!" Mace rolled left. The Oscar tried to follow, just in time to fly into 8 converging streams of 50 cal fury. The bullets didn't merely hit, they ripped, tearing through the Oscar's nose, blowing the engine apart, severing the wings from the fuselage. Flame consumed the cockpit before the pieces even touched the beach. The wreck tumbled into the tree line in a shower of fire and splintered bamboo. Mace steadied his breathing. "Thanks, Smoke." Ellison's laugh crackled over comms. "Buy me a drink after this, kid. We ain't done yet." Above them, the battle spiraled into chaos. The Zeros, once confident, gliding like dancers, were now scattered, fleeing the Thunderbolts' slashing dives. A pair of P-47s dove together on a lone Zero, shredding it in 3 seconds. Another Jug pursued 3 climbing Oscars, firing in short, brutal bursts, peppering their wings until one caught fire and veered into the sea. But the Japanese were not done. A second wave swept in from the northwest, sun at their backs, diving for the American beachhead. Fighters, bombers, dozens of them. Blue Flight had minutes, maybe less, to intercept before they reached ships and infantry on the shore. Ellison rallied his men. "All jugs, form on me. Full climb. We hit them high and roll through." Mace gritted his teeth. A full climb in a P-47 with combat weight and max throttle was like pushing a brick uphill through molasses. But the R-2800 roared, hauling the tonnage skyward with stubborn determination. The sky darkened with approaching aircraft. Ki-48 Lily bombers, slow, twin-engined, vulnerable, hugged tight formation behind a screen of Zero escorts. The escorts expected the Thunderbolts to dive through from above, but then lose energy, allowing the Zeros to swarm them in turning fights. But the 348th had learned. They never stuck around long enough for the trap. Ellison's voice came sharp. "Slashing run, one pass only. Hit the bombers, don't look back." Mace soaked his gloves with sweat as they leveled out at 12,000 feet. The formations below tightened, bombers steady, fighters weaving. Then, smoke rolled inverted. Blue Flight followed. The world flipped. The coastline became sky, sky became sea. Gravity grabbed Mace by the ribs as the P-47 dropped into a howling dive. The airspeed screamed past 420 MPa, then 450, then 480. Zeros scrambled frantically to intercept. Their wings fluttered at high speed, dangerously close to tearing off. They could not keep up. Mace lined up a Lily bomber growing rapidly in his gun's sight. Its dorsal gunner opened fire, orange sparks twinkling upward. He pressed the trigger. 8 Brownings thundered in perfect harmony. Shells tore into the Lily's fuselage, ripping the roof off the cockpit. The bomber pitched nose down, engines aflame, and plunged toward the ocean like a comet. But Mace didn't watch it fall. He rolled hard, feeling G-forces claw at his spine, then pulled out of the dive with a grunt. A Zero flashed past his right wing, too fast to shoot, too fast to turn. The thunder of air, gunfire, engines, and exploding metal merged into an almost physical pressure, like standing at the heart of a collapsing building. On the horizon, more shadows approached. The battle wasn't over. It was escalating. The shadows on the horizon grew sharper, fast. Another Zero squadron, maybe 2, pushing in tight formation, diving like falcons toward the American beachhead. Their commanders had learned from earlier failures. They weren't here to duel. They were here to punch through with speed and numbers, overwhelm the P-47s, and gut the invasion force below. Mace leveled off at 6,000 feet, lungs burning from the high G pullout. The Thunderbolt quivered slightly as the airframe absorbed the abuse. He glanced at the manifold pressure, green, oil temps, yellow but survivable, ammunition, half gone, and the next wave was already coming. Ellison's voice surged through the radio, strained but commanding. "Blue Flight, form on me, nose east. We cut across their dive path and break them apart before the run." Mace wiped sweat from his eyes. The sky ahead darkened with incoming fighters, 20, maybe more. Zeros in steep descent, sunlight flashing off their wingtips. Their engines hummed a higher, more delicate pitch compared to the Jug's deep bellow. Elegant killers. Fast, coordinated, and entirely confident they could smash their way through. Below, the sea glittered. The beaches of Leyte, alive with landing craft, trucks, and desperate American engineers, lay fully exposed. If even a handful of Japanese bombers got through, the slaughter would be unimaginable. Mace tightened formation with Ellison. 4 jugs against a swarm. He could practically hear those Japanese pilots laughing again. Heavy Thunderbolts, easy targets, too slow, too clumsy. They assumed the Americans would try climbing to intercept. They assumed wrong. "Hold, hold," Ellison whispered into the mic. Zeros poured downward, closing fast. 3,000 feet, 2,000, 1,000. Break! Blue flight split like shrapnel. 4 Thunderbolts peeling outward in a synchronized bloom, each one instantly accelerating in shallow dives directly across the incoming formation. Mace rolled right into the path of 2 descending Zeros. Their pilots hesitated, surprised the Americans weren't running upward, but slashing horizontally, forcing crossing angles that neutered the Japanese advantage. The first Zero flashed in front of Mace's gun sight, too fast for a clean shot. The second Zero rolled into a left bank, trying a deflection burst against the jug's nose. Mace stabbed the rudder. The P-47 skidded right, an ugly brute force maneuver a Zero's fragile airframe couldn't risk at this speed. The Japanese pilot overshot by inches. Mace fired a half-second burst. The Zero's starboard wing disintegrated. The fighter cartwheeled through the air, smashing into its wingman before both spiraled downward in a storm of metal confetti. But the sky was now a tornado of movement. Zeros swarmed like hornets, some diving, some climbing, some turning tight, trying to rope in the heavier jugs. They knew the Thunderbolt's weakness: prolonged turning fights. Mace felt his stomach compress as a pair of Zeros dropped behind him, their longer-range 20mm cannons spitting amber tracers. A burst slammed into his right wing. The jug shook hard. Warning lights flickered. Come on, you ugly brute. Stay with me," he hissed. He shoved the nose down, letting gravity help him accelerate. The Thunderbolt did what no Zero could at this speed. It stayed together. The Japanese fighters tried to follow, but their wings fluttered, vibrating violently. One Zero pulled out, afraid of structural failure. The other stayed on Mace's tail, pushing the envelope. Mace yanked the throttle, water injections screaming as the jug thundered into a 420 mop low dive. The Zero stuck to him. Skilled pilot, aggressive, unafraid to risk the airframe. Mace flicked a glance at the mirror. The enemy pilot was young, maybe 19, jaw set, eyes hard with fanatic resolve. The Zero edged closer. Closer. Too close. Mace smiled grimly. "You shouldn't be here, kid." He rolled the jug violently to the right, just enough to make the Zero adjust. That adjustment was its death sentence. The Japanese fighter hit compression. The controls stiffened. Its nose dropped, almost imperceptibly, but fatal at this speed. The Zero fell into Mace's slipstream, turbulence tearing across its lightweight wings. One wing snapped clean off. The Zero disintegrated in a burst of debris and fire. Mace pulled up, chest aching from G-forces. Above, the sky was still filled with smoke trails and spiraling fighters. Bombers were getting through. Ellison's frantic shout burst over the radio. "They're headed for the beach! All jugs! Intercept! Now!" Mace saw them. Lily bombers diving low, 4 of them. Barely 500 feet above them, surf. And only 2 friendly fighters anywhere near them. He rammed the throttle forward again. The Thunderbolt clawed for altitude. His ammo was low. The bombers were seconds from release. He had one chance. He dove after them. The Lily bombers hugged the coastline, skimming barely above the surf, their bellies fat with explosives meant for American landing craft and fuel depots. Their engines droned low and steady, disciplined, unafraid, committed to the run. Behind them, a screen of Zeros fought desperately to distract or slow the Thunderbolts. But Mace wasn't looking at the fighters. His world narrowed to those 4 bombers. The jug screamed downward, metal groaning from strain. Ellison's voice cut through the static, strained, ragged. "Mace, don't you break off. I'm hit. You're the closest. Get them before they release." Mace tightened his jaw. He could hear something in Ellison's voice, pain, maybe blood in the mic. But there was no time to ask. He checked his ammo. 88 rounds left per gun. Enough for one solid firing pass. Maybe. He dropped to 1,000 feet, overtaking a pair of Zeros tangled with another P-47 from Red Flight. A smoking Oscar streaked past him, spiraling like a burning leaf. An instant later, a .50 cal burst from somewhere shredded it mid-air. But the bombers remained untouched. "Come on, come on." He coaxed the Thunderbolt lower, aligning behind the Lily formation. The lead bomber's dorsal gunner spotted him, late, but not too late. Tracers slashed past Mace's canopy, glowing like angry fireflies. He felt the impacts, thud, thud, on the fuselage. One round sparked against the armored windscreen. The jug held. "Too close to miss now," Mace whispered. He exhaled. The gun sight steadied on the lead bomber's left engine. He squeezed the trigger. 8 Brownings roared. The nose of the jug vibrated violently. Shell casing streamed behind him like a golden comet tail. Rounds chewed through the Lily's port engine. Oil erupted in a black geyser, then flame. Then the wing buckled, folding like paper. The bomber snapped left, spinning into the sea. But the remaining 3 stayed locked on their attack run. Mace switched targets instantly, rolling half right, skidding into line behind the second bomber. This one jinked, slow and awkward, but enough to ruin his first burst. Damn. He steadied, waited, waited. Now! He fired again. The starboard engine of the second Lily simply exploded. No fire first, just a violent detonation that ripped the cowling apart. The bomber veered sideways, clipping the third Lily's wing. Both aircraft tumbled end over end before disappearing into a boiling plume of spray. Only one bomber remained, and it was seconds, literal seconds, from release. Mace jammed the throttle, engine screaming as he closed distance. The final Lily held steady, gunner firing constantly, tracers forming a curtain of death in front of him. The jug. 2 struck the left wing. 1 hammered the canopy frame. Another tore a fist-sized hole in the elevator. The jug wobbled, but stayed airborne. He didn't have time to line up a long shot. He needed to get close. Too close. He dove beneath the bomber, rising into its blind belly arc. 500 feet from impact. 300. The surf blasted upward from prop wash. The gunner spun, trying to reacquire. Too late. Mace pulled the stick, rising just enough to cross directly behind the bomber's tail. The Lily filled his entire gun sight. Massive, vulnerable, doomed. He pulled the trigger. At point-blank range, the 50 cal rounds didn't just penetrate, they pulverized. The tail disintegrated in a storm of metal shards. The fuselage tore open like a ripped canvas sack. The bomber broke in half. The front section nosedived so violently it almost smashed into Mace's own prop arc. He jerked the jug upward, barely avoiding the falling debris. Silence, brief, fragile, followed. Ellison's faint voice whispered through the comm. "Mace, you got them. All of them." But the moment didn't last. A flicker of movement in his mirror. A Zero, one that had been lurking high, dived straight onto him. Amber tracers hissed past his cockpit. Mace rolled hard, engine coughing, airframe screaming. He yanked back on the stick. But the jug didn't respond normally. Control damage. Elevator sluggish. He was wounded. And the Zero was hunting, closing fast. The The final dance had begun. The Zero fell into Mace's six like a shadow with teeth. Its pilot, calm, precise, patient, closed in without wasting ammo. He knew the jug was damaged. He could see its uneven stabilization, the ragged holes punched through the elevator, the smoking scrape along the right wing. He simply eased forward, lining up for the perfect kill shot. Mace felt the jug buck like it wanted to sink into the sea. The elevator was mushy, the controls heavy. He pumped the rudder, keeping the plane level by muscle alone. Then the Zero opened fire. A burst shrieked past him. 2 rounds slammed into the fuselage behind the seat. Metallic thuds he felt through the armor plate on his back. A third star-shaped crack formed in the right side of the canopy glass. Mace's breathing quickened. He's good. Too good. He hugged the deck, skimming barely 20 feet above the rolling surf. The water blurred by, wind shear tearing at the wingtips. But the Zero followed, unfazed, wings flexing gently as it closed distance with terrible inevitability. Mace had one advantage left: raw speed. But the damaged elevator meant he couldn't climb into a dive. His jug was now a wounded animal. The Zero fired again. More tracers streaked past. Mace mashed the throttle forward, water injection screaming, the R-2800 coughing but pushing, pushing, pushing. The altimeter hugged 0. He banked left, harshly. Spray blasted the underside of the wings. The Zero followed effortlessly. Mace cursed. You can't outrun him like this. He'll stay on you till he burns the jug out from under you. He needed something else. Then he saw it, dead ahead. A jagged line of cliffs rising from the coast, dark stone shoulders jutting into the sea like the ribs of a giant. The morning sun cast long shadows over the rocks. If he could skim into those shadows, force the Zero low, maybe, just maybe, he could break him. He dove even lower, 10 feet above the water. The prop tips sliced through sea spray, sending white streaks spiraling behind him. The Zero hesitated. Its pilot understood the danger, but he followed anyway. Mace tore into the shadow of the cliffs, the world turning cold and gray around him. The air became turbulent, unpredictable, slamming into the jug's damaged control surfaces. The Zero wavered. The pilot had to hold the stick tighter, correct constantly. Mace jinked left, then right. Not smooth, not elegant, just violent enough to disrupt the pursuer's firing line. A burst from the Zero missed by inches. Stone faces blurred past on both sides. The cliffs narrowed. Mace risked a glance back. The Zero was still there. But now it was fighting the air, the turbulence, the low altitude. Its pilot's precision was finally cracking. Mace had one shot left, one move. He breathed in, out, and waited for the right moment. The jug hurtled toward a stone outcropping jutting into the canyon, a rock spur barely high enough to smash into. At the last instant, Mace yanked the jug up just enough. The belly scraped dust from the rock, leaving a smear of gray on the fuselage. The Zero mimicked the move, but its lighter frame bounced harder in the turbulence. The wing clipped the rock. Just a kiss. A tiny kiss. But enough. The wingtip tore away. The Zero cartwheeled midair, ripping itself apart in a spray of white metal fragments that sparkled briefly before plunging into the sea below. Silence filled the jug's cockpit. Only the labored wheeze of the R-2800 remained. Mace exhaled slowly, shoulders slumping, sweat dripping into his eyes. He nudged the wounded Thunderbolt away from the cliffs, coaxing it into level flight. The ocean stretched calm and endless ahead, mocking the chaos behind him. Ellison's voice crackled faintly, weaker than before. "Mace, report in. You still with us?" Mace smiled despite the shaking in his hands. Still here, Smoke. Jugs can't die, remember? A pause. Then a rasped laugh. Damn right. But the battle wasn't fully over. In the distance, the rest of Blue Flight struggled to regroup. Smoke was hit. Others were missing, and Mace's fuel was dangerously low. The Jug limped homeward, wounded but undefeated, trailing Smoke as it flew toward Tacloban. He should have died today. Any other fighter pilot would have. But he had the Jug and its 850 cals on his side. And the Japanese would never laugh at the Thunderbolt again.